You should definitely, by the way, have your own range of spectacles.
I have. Well,
you should.
No.
You just changed spectacles. You had your comedy spectacles, and now you've got serious spectacles.
I got my serious.
But if they were Mark Kermode spectacles, I think they would go down rather well. Elton John has got his new range of spectacles. I heard him talking to Ken Bruce on Greatest Hits Radio, and I thought Mark should do the same.
That was nicely done. We're like 30 seconds in and you plug Greatest Hits. That's very good. On the double album of Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, there were 2 booklets that you got. One of them was a lyric booklet and one of them was a scrapbook. And in the scrapbook, it included I think it was Jackie magazine cartoon version of Elton John's life. And there is a key moment in it in which the young Reg Dwight has to wear glasses and he thinks, I can't be cool. And then he sees a picture of Buddy Holly and he thinks, if Buddy Holly wore glasses, he was cool, therefore I can make glasses cool. And it always stuck with me, that image. And I think it's Jackie magazine because the whole thing is printed in the thing about that moment when you suddenly realise that glasses are the coolest things in the world. I now look at photographs of myself before I wore glasses. I couldn't see anything. And I look wrong.
Well,
I love the idea of you have one pair of glasses.
I have 2 pairs of glasses.
2 pairs of glasses.
I have in fact, it's actually funny we should start talking about this. It does come up in our conversation about Chevalier with Lucy Boynton and Kelvin Harrison because Kelvin takes a shining to my glasses.
Takes a shine, not takes a shining.
No, he takes a shining because he
goes to Jack Nicholson.
He broke through the door to try and get it. So I have 2 pairs. I have the pair that you can see behind me, which I wear here.
Which you've got on now.
No, I haven't. These are slightly different.
They look exactly the same.
They don't make these anymore. Lunar are the company, and they don't make them anymore. So so I can't get the lenses to fit my changing prescription.
Wow.
So anyway, Kelvin looks a whole lot better in my glasses than
I have 7 pairs. I wake up in the morning and I make a decision as to, and I always carry it around a couple. Because I don't change very much. I always wear this is the Jonathan Richman T-shirt that I've been wearing forever, and that's the Harrington that I've been wearing forever. Or if I'm doing it's the suit that I've been wearing forever. So the only thing I can really change is my glasses. And
7 pairs. Mm-hmm. And what's the difference between the 7?
Different frames.
Do you have if you're feeling loud and creative, you wear showbiz glasses, and then if
not
showbiz
serious, glasses. No, I've got the ones that are dark with the blue lenses, which I really like. I've got various. I mean, they may all look the same to you. They're all subtly different to me.
Ones.
Well, the most flamboyant ones are those ones that I just took off,
like Dame Edna,
which are the ones that are see-through, but then they've got photochromic lenses. That they go dark when you go outside.
Anyway,
my ever-changing moods.
The only way it is worth talking about spectacles, but just Kelvin does take a shining to my spectacles. No, nurse, I said remove his spectacles.
Very good. There's a very good song by the Popticians. Remember that? He's got his glasses on his face. He's got his glasses in the proper place. He's got his glasses on his face. He's not got his glasses in his glasses case. He's got his glasses on.
What are you doing later?
That
sounded like a chat-up line, actually. What are you doing later then?
What are you doing later then? Well, funny you ask. I'm going to be reviewing a bunch of films, including Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, Medusa Deluxe. We also have Evil Dead Rise in Take 2 and Chevalier with our special guests who you were just talking about.
Kelvin Harrison Jr., he being the Chevalier in question. I
was trying to think of a glasses pun, but I couldn't get one.
And Lucy Boynton, they're going to be on this particular show. In our extra takes, a whole lot of extra things that we haven't quite worked out yet, but 90 minutes of glory.
Yeah. You didn't jump. I've seen Evil Dead Rise now. We're doing it in Take 2 because it's coming to streaming services.
But, I'll believe it when we get there.
Okay.
I still think when we get there, you'll go,
I have.
You actually have?
I have.
3 bonus reviews, which are...
Love Without Walls, Evil Dead Rise, which is coming to streaming services, and Crowded Room, which is the new Apple TV series starring, hello to Jason Isaacs, happy birthday incidentally for yesterday.
I can't believe he's 60.
I know, but so that means I'm now 7 weeks away from being 60 because he's 7 weeks older than me.
Weekend watch list and the weekend not list. A film to set the Betamax for over the weekend and one to definitely avoid. Pretentious Moi is currently Mark Kermode 15 versus Mark Kermode 13.
I still think we're missing a half.
Tricky one this week, I think.
Oh, great.
One frame back is films in which robots are in disguise. You can support us via Apple Podcasts, or you can go to extratakes.com for non-fruit related devices. And if you're already a Vanguardista, as always, we salute you. I've turned over 2 pages there.
You have. I've got store plug.
Oh, yes. Okay. That's
store plug.
That's very good. Cue the music. Hey, say goodbye to lukewarm water misery with Kermode and Mayo's very fine stainless steel water bottle, open brackets, thermal, close brackets.
This double-walled vacuum water bottle is thermally insulated.
And it's copper lined.
It keeps drinks hot for 12 hours.
Or cool for 24 hours.
This bottle is also used by that blonde bombshell himself, Lucius Malfoy.
A.K.A. Jason Isaacs. And is in fact the only official piece of Hello to Jason... Hello to Jason... emotionally overcome. Hello to Jason Isaacs merchandise in existence.
And of course, it displays not only the official Kermode and Mayo's Take neon logo so you can demonstrate your excellent cultural taste to passers-by,
yes,
but also the deathless catchphrase, Hello to Jason Isaacs.
So why not head to store.kermodeandmayo.com now?
Are our souls completely sold now?
I was walking, came to the crossroads, and there was a guy, and I made a pact with him. And
I said, I'd like to play a mean guitar. He said, all right, but I'll need your soul forever.
Yes.
I went, ask Harry Angel. He's got it.
Ian Goodyear has sent us an email. Now,
any relation to Mark?
No, it's spelled completely differently.
Oh, how is it spelled?
Good, and then Y-E-R.
Was it completely differently? It's I-E-R is
Mark Goodyear.
Yeah, Y-E-R isn't completely differently. It's spelled slightly differently.
It's very different. It's got a Y in it.
It's got one letter difference.
Yeah, so it's not the same.
No, but it's got one letter difference.
It's very, very different. Okay, not the same. Dear Pearl and Dean. Now, this is about typography.
Oh, good.
I don't want to lose people too early in the pod. I'm going to keep looking at you to make sure that I've still got... You are representing the audience now.
Okay.
Right. I want to keep your attention.
Okay.
If I see any glazing over, I'm going to stop.
I should put on my glasses that go dark.
And I can see. I've been following your discussion about punctuation, and speaking as a graphic designer of considerable vintage, I wish to chime in to correct a previous correspondent. In this week's show, one emailer declared that an N-dash, E-N-dash, is so called because it's the same width as the letter N, and an M-dash, E-M, is as wide as the letter M.
M, yeah.
Now,
that sounded like a fascinating fact.
This isn't strictly correct.
Oh.
Which is a shame because it's a lot easier than what Ian is about to tell us.
Okay, go on.
The real explanation harks back to the days of letterpress type, when each character sat on its own block of metal. The size of this block was measured in points, a unit of measurement nowadays defined as 1/72 of an inch, so 1/72. 1/72.
You're in danger of losing me.
Okay. For a particular font, e.g. a 10-point Baskerville Roman, all the characters would sit on blocks with a height of 10 points. Still with me? This had to be tall enough to accommodate ascenders and descenders such that they wouldn't clash if two lines of type were set one above the other with no additional line spacing. This basic unit. Okay. Best wishes to you all. Ian Goodyear. To be honest, I am going to... That's it. And then he adds
I didn't understand that.
No.
What was the joke? Go on.
It's a typography joke.
Okay, go on.
I wasn't going to read it out, but it's actually probably more entertaining than the rest of the email. Apologies to you.
Okay.
Have you heard about the semicolon that was rushed to hospital?
No.
It lost its dot and lapsed into a comma.
That's very good.
Redeemed at the end.
Also, on the YouTube channel, Kermode and Mayo's YouTube channel, now subscribed to by many good people, underneath the review of Spider-Man : across the thing, loads of people writing, it's not an N-dash, it's a hyphen.
We're going to get to that. And it's actually not a hyphen.
Oh!
We're going to get to that.
Oh!
Yes, when we do the top 10.
Oh, excellent.
It's actually something that I haven't heard of before.
Excellent.
So,
okay.
So stand by, punctuation fans,
yes.
because it's about to... You think that was specific.
There is a font joke in Across the Spider-Verse, weirdly enough.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, correspondence at kermodeandmayo.com, sorry, that was a fraction of what you did tell us, but at least we got
I didn't understand it.
At least we got the joke.
Yes, okay. The joke is very good. The joke redeemed you.
Do us a review then.
Medusa Deluxe, which is a genre-defined Brit pick from Thomas Hardiman, who I had the pleasure of interviewing at the BFI earlier this week. This is set in the murderous world of hairdressing and hairdressing competitions where foul deeds are afoot and everybody is a suspect. So a victim has been found scalped. Somebody else, they all right? No, they're dead. That's how it works. So we're backstage. There are hairdressers, there are models. They're all awaiting interviews from the detectives who are trying to find the criminal. Is it the hairdresser with a competitive streak who once struck a rival with a bottle of conditioner? Is it another competitor who may have been trying to fix the competition with the boss, Rene? Or is it Rene who may have been involved with the victim? Or is it a security guard? Or is it a jealous partner?
Don't know.
Here's a clip.
Right, listen to me. When you talk, you give short answers, all right? How long do you know him?
Years.
Do you want to put a number on that? Where'd you meet?
Cutting hair. Just me and him in the salon. And his mum on reception with perm.
Okay, short answers, Rene. They don't care about perms.
Perfect beach wave.
So, okay, you started a salon when you met him, and then you left to run these, all right? End of. I've got no interest in you going down, Rene.
I love that phrase. Short answers, Rene. They're not interested.
He had your
in
glasses on.
He did. And he also has my hair on as well. Which
It was
is
kind of like Andy Serkis hair.
Yeah. Actually, Andy Serkis has got the most magnificent hair.
He does.
He can do anything with it. So, this is shot by Robbie Ryan, legendary cinematographer, Yorgos Lanthimos' favourite, I think probably most famously, but he's an absolutely brilliant cinematographer. And it is shot and edited as if it were one shot. So you remember Boiling Point. It isn't one shot. It's orchestrated. But the reason it's put together in the way of Hitchcock's Rope, which obviously has cuts every, whatever it is, 12 minutes because of real changes, it's put together in that way to give you the sense that there's a breathless thing unfolding, that wherever you turn, something else is happening, and every lead you follow leads you down another particular rabbit hole. It is visually amazing. I mean, it is visually really, really exciting. One of the things that I like about the film is it's very arch and very funny and very dark and very strange, but it has this sort of oddly puppyish joy about cinema. It's a kind of film which goes, look at the way that cinema can just engulf you and grab you in a story and just pull you by the lapels and drag you in. I mean, there's a film recently called Swan Song, which I really, really love, with Udo Kier, which takes place in the world of hairdressing. And I suppose if you think of a film like Best in Show, the whole, the dog show competition stuff, there is something really interesting about being inside a world which is both complex and absurd, and the fact that it has this murder mystery thing. And there was Deadly Cuts recently as well, wasn't there? I mean, I found it kind of slightly bewildering, slightly disorientating. The director cites Ken Russell as an influence, and I think that tells you a lot because, I mean, Russell's whole style was very kind of, flamboyant and in your face, not without substance. I mean, I think people misread Russell as being style over substance, but it's a way of saying that the style should grab you and the style should sort of electrify you. And the dialogue is as scathing as, as a dollop of bleach on your hair, and the plot is very, very twisted. At one point, they're talking about a fontange. Do you know what a fontange is?
No.
It's like a cage thing that you put on your hair to build this kind of rococo creations of hair around. And in a way, the plot itself is like that. It's all built around this kind of fontange. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know it. I only knew it from the film. And I said, is that a real word? And then I looked it up. So as I said, directed by Thomas Hardiman, is a name I think you'll be hearing a lot more of because clearly a very, very talented filmmaker. And like I said, this is dark, twisted, strange, funny, but it's got a real sense of, isn't cinema exciting? Isn't there something really exciting about a visual medium that can just lead you through all this strange absurdity? And I watched it and I thought, he's going to like Ken Russell. And then I was asking him about his favourite films and he was citing The Boyfriend. And so it was good. Yeah. It's called Medusa Deluxe.
I don't smoke.
Neither do I.
But I need a fag. Have you got a fag?
No.
No. I feel stressed, that's all. So this is not a setup, by the way. This is just having had a stressful journey in today. I feel like, oh, okay, maybe no, it wouldn't.
Yeah, because you were driven in by somebody who had never been on a road before.
Indeed I was. I'm just wondering how long it takes for that kind of stressful start to the morning to dissipate.
Can I tell you a story about, because I don't smoke, okay? I think I'm allergic to smoke. It just gives me a terrible headache.
Also, if you're asthmatic, it's a really stupid... In fact, it's a stupid
It's a stupid idea. It's
Stupid
terrible.
idea.
It's an awful thing. And yeah, fine. And I remember once I was in a very, very stressful situation, which involved, yes, it was very, very stressful. It involved following an ambulance somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the car with the person who was driving me, because I was not in a state to drive. They were smoking, and I this is a while ago when people did this, and I thought that'll help. So I said, give me a drag on that. And it just made everything worse. It gave me a headache and made me feel sick. And also want to poo, which is...
Now there we take an unexpected... Who knew? If there are any medics listening, and I know there are, maybe you can explain that very strange moment.
So I don't do that.
No. That's a very interesting thing. If every time you have a drag on a cigarette,
you have to try hard.
You have to go and try hard.
Well, the point is, you don't have to try hard. You just have a drag on a cigarette.
Oh my goodness me! Well, that seems an appropriate point to take a break. Still to come, Mark is going to be reviewing these films unless he has a fag and he's not here.
Well, we're going to be reviewing, I'm just going down on the thing, I've got it in the thing, I've got it here. Oh yes, Transformers Rise of the Beast, which is a new Transformers movie, and Chevalier with our special guests.
Who are appearing very shortly. We're going to be back before you can say, echte Tragöden auf der Welt sind keine Konflikte zwischen richtig und falsch. Es handelt sich Konflikt zwischen zwei Rechten.
Go on.
Genuine tragedies in the world are not conflicts between right and wrong. They are conflicts between two rights. Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel.
Wow.
Liechtenstein was a beery swine who was just as schlossed as Schlegel. That rhymes with Hegel.
It does, yes.
Yeah,
So, it's... How does the Hegel...
Nothing. Nietzsche couldn't teach about the raising of the wrist.
Socrates himself was merry. John Stuart Mill of his own free will on a half pint of sticking eel. Let us say he's sticking away.
Half a crate whiskey every
day. Aristotle was a for the bottle, and
Hobbes was fond of his dram.
René Descartes was a drunken. Well, I drink, therefore I am.
Anyway, I'm not.
Anyway,
time for a break. So is a cigarette a laxative?
Well, but as it turns out, in my case, although I remember my friend, sorry, this is, since we're going down this particular...
Well, at your instigation.
My friend Tim, who used to love browsing in record shops, but for some reason, the act of browsing in record shops made him want to try hard.
Really?
And so he could only do it.
It's all in the mud.
He could only do it if he knew there was a casting nearby.
Oh, my goodness me. Anyway, if anyone would like to explain what's going on, correspondence at kermode.com. I feel certain that people will join in with this one. John Bowes, who's from Sale in Manchester. Good Doctors. Now, it's been a good while since I've watched it. So this is back on the first real U certificate idea.
Oh, yes.
That if you stop at a particular point, everything is fine and dandy.
Yeah. Although it turns out that very few films are actually fine and dandy for the first reel.
Johnson, it's been a good while since I've watched this, so I may be profoundly wrong, in which case, oops. But I think the first act of Gremlins might simply be a heartwarming film about a family at Christmas and their new cutesy pet. You could probably even keep things running a wee bit past the point where spilling water on your pet generates lots of other cutesy pets. But probably, again from memory, not any further than that. No, yours, no doubt, misrememberingly, Dave Powell from Crystal Palace.
I can't remember whether there's anything before the arrival of the present.
Actually, so that email was from Dave Powell. This is the one from John Bowes in Sale. My apologies. Dear, ooh, this is nice, and Gaspar Noé's films are not normally the first that spring to mind when looking for family-friendly fare. However, the opening scene of Climax is simply a loving modern dance routine performed by a bunch of young people having a lovely time. Do be very sure to switch it all the way off when the dancing ends.
All the way
I think the clue might be in the title of the film, and also the name of the director.
Would that be a moment when somebody stands up to adjust the aerial on the television? Do you remember that?
Yes. Stand in front of the television. Look over there.
Scene of a French nature.
This is a very interesting email from Zach Reinold from New York.
Okay.
On the subject of one-act U films. May I suggest Fiddler on the Roof? My 26-year-old sister only discovered recently that this tragic film did not have a happy ending. As children, we had only ever watched up until the wedding at the end of the first act before the Russians arrived, never actually witnessing the rest of the film and its depiction of the Jewish community navigating the threat of pogroms and exile. What a lovely tale of a young man and woman overcoming the expectations of their community and living happily ever after, or so we thought. While rewatching the film with our parents a couple of years ago, my sister grew more and more horrified as the film went on and on and on, with one distressing moment after the other. Perhaps it was as the film crept into its third hour that she realised that Fiddler on the Roof wasn't a light-hearted romantic comedy. Tinkety-tonk and down with anti-Semites, Zach Reinhold in New York. And that's interesting because everyone knows If I Was a Rich Man. I love Fiddler on the Roof. I think it's a fantastic film. And I reckon Zach's on something there, that you kind of forget the pogrom and what comes after the first act.
You could also say the same about Sound of Music, because, of course, the Anschluss happens and the Nazis take over. And Sound of Music, I know it ends with, this is a hot spot, everyone knows this, it ends with them going over the mountains the wrong way. Of course, that isn't what happened in real life. What happened in real life is that they went on tour and didn't come back. So it's an invention, but it is possible to think of the Sound of Music as these are a few of my favourite things, and
That's it.
And forget that actually it is about the Nazis annexing and preparing to destroy the world.
Quick book reference.
Yes.
I'm reading a book called Everyday Hate by a guy called Dave Rich.
Okay.
And it's about anti-Semitism around the world.
Right, okay.
And it's amazing. So here's the fact that just comes up in the first few pages. Apart from the fact, it blows you mind, anti-Semitism as a word was invented by an anti-Semite who was a 19th century German, whose name I've forgotten, who invented it because he was looking for another way of saying Jew hate. So he came up with anti-Semitism. And it's anyway.
What, to make it sound
more scientific or something like that. Anyway, according to Dave Rich, in the UK, there are 300,000 Jews, right? There was a poll, the most recent poll about British attitudes to Jews. This is a few years ago. 2.4% in this poll said they didn't like Jews, right? So
that's an encouragingly small number.
Well, then he says that transfers to 1.5 million people who said,
that's terrifying.
When asked by someone who rang up to ask them their opinions, said they didn't like Jews.
Okay.
So Dave Rich
in that
says
case, that's terrifying.
That's 5 anti-Semites for every Jew in Britain. Anyway, it's a fantastic book. Overt anti-Semites as well.
Wow. Okay, isn't that fascinating how and terrifying how statistics can sound like one? Because when you said 2.4, that sounds...
Okay, so it's quite small, but translates to quite a big number.
No, I know, and therefore terrifying, and I mean horrible that any one person should be. But I mean, because of the the stuff that's been going on recently, you kind of think.
Anyway, it's a great. I do recommend it. It's worth getting a hold of.
Yeah.
Zach, thank you very much indeed. Correspondence at KermaneMayo.com. Box office top 10 at 37. Old Man Movie, Lactopolis, the. That's the order in which it comes.
Lactopolis, the. I mean, it's mad. It's a stop motion animation about the fact that if you don't milk cows, they explode. And I think it has a kind of. I think it has a vegan agenda, but I'm not entirely sure. It is absolutely bonkers, and at the end, it turns into Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Cowpocalypse.
Brian Tarnoff, runner-up, Best Older Critic, New Forest Film Festival 2011.
Oh, wow.
Dear Snowball and Napoleon, watching this jolly Estonian stop motion, I did think that the English marketing had missed a trick in not naming it Old Man Movie, Lactopolis Cow. Exclamation
Very
mark.
good. Very good.
Or adding possible taglines, Shaun the Sheep meets Eraserhead, David Cronenberg's Peter Rabbit, does for animal husbandry what Evil Dead did for forestry. Honestly, though, it's not quite as extreme as that, or as extreme as the BBFC advice make it sound, but it is consistently daftly absurd and laugh out loud. Very saddened that I was the sole viewer in one of 2 screenings at my local house of picture. This deserves to find an audience for its anarchic, squelchy silliness.
Yes. The anarchic, squelchy silliness is about right.
Number 10, Sisu.
Which is really good fun. We've talked about the fact that it features somebody having a landmine thrown at their head. You jumped over number 22, which is Amanda, which is kind of interesting, quirky, oddball character comedy in the mold of those kind of Greek weird wave movies, although I think it's not quite as good as the best of those. But Sisu is really, really good fun, and it does feature a landmine being thrown at somebody's head.
Possibly for the first time.
I haven't seen that before on screen. I'm sure somebody will correct me.
Number 9 in the UK is Hypnotic.
Hypnotic. It's funny because we've had a lot of emails from people that say it's absolute rubbish and I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I did laugh. I have seen it twice because the second time I was writing a review and I wanted to make sure it wasn't just that the first time I was misreading how silly it was. It is properly silly.
Number 8, Zara Hatker, Zara Backer.
So not press screened, Hindi film. Would love to know if anyone's seen it. It is a romantic comedy.
Number 7 is Reality. Pesky 716, that's not really a name. Watched this film last night and loved it. This is how I wish more movies based on real events took place. Using the actual transcript so there's no room for dramatization or fluff. The acting is fantastic and at under 90 minutes, I felt more tension than most Hollywood action blockbusters. And Green Giant says, considering the film takes place mainly in one room and on the lawn in front of the house, It was incredibly compelling. I'd recommend this film.
There is a weird, and it is coincidental thing happening, which is that obviously Reality Winner was charged.
I remember. So that is just to remind me.
Her name is Reality Winner.
Yeah.
Apparently, her parents wanted a real winner, and that's how that came about. And she was arrested under the Espionage Act for mishandling of classified documents. It is really fascinating that this film is in cinemas at exactly the same time that it looks like. And we are recording this on a Wednesday, the indictments against Trump in relation to the mishandling of classified documents may be coming sooner rather than later. And that provides a stark contrast in terms of those documents and the documents involved in the Reality Winner case.
So that's number 7. Number 6 here. Number 6 in the States as well, Super Mario Brothers movie. Number 5 here.
Go on, how are you going to say it?
Number 3 in America, I'm going to say it precisely as it's written and as it's said in the film, which is The Boogeyman.
Boogeyman.
Which is a new entry.
Yeah. I mean, so you spoke to the director, who I thought gave a very good account of himself. Right. There was the rather alarming story about terrifying the youngster with the dinosaur.
Yes. No, he dressed as a dinosaur to upset the 2-year-old, to make him really freak out on camera.
But it was okay because he asked the mum first.
Yes.
Which is, yeah. But I think he's a good director. I think that this is more generic than his previous work, Host. And what I hope is that in the future he gets the chance to make a big multiplex movie that is less generic in terms of, I mean, the title tells you everything. It's like calling, The Boogeyman is like, it's the archetypal fear of everything story. But I thought it was well done. And I think it's at its best when you don't see the Boogeyman.
Jonathan Root says, I enjoyed The Boogeyman last night. Not Rob Savage's best work. I think that's Host, but I still have really enjoyed Dashcam and this. Rob uses decent characterization, cinematography and sound in a standard ghoulish story, whereas others can rely too much on blood and jump scares. Number 4 here, number 4 in the States, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Which I was really surprised by how affecting I found it. It has a very strong, it's not even a subplot, it's kind of really the main plot, which is about vivisection. And it's about the way in which experimenting on creatures is really horrible and tragic. And that's right there in the middle of this Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which up until now have been kind of largely defined by retro pop hits and sassy dialogue. So it surprised me. Sorry.
Number 3, Fast 10, your seatbelts.
And that is still the best joke that's been made. A friend of mine went to see it. And I said, what did you think? They said, well, I'd never seen another Fast movie. And I said, okay, did it make any sense? They went, no. I said, okay.
Yeah, but like I said, it's like The Archers. It doesn't matter if you've missed all of the others. You just join in.
You'd missed all the others as well,
yes,
right?
Yeah, the first one that I'd seen.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Cars go fasty fast. Cars go jumpy crashing.
And it's family, isn't it?
We need to get family merchandise. F-A-M-B-L-Y.
Number 2 here, number 2 in America, The Little Mermaid.
So off its top spot, it still did pretty well in its opening weekend and has more than washed its face financially, has done well for Disney, as all the live action, in inverted commas, because there's an awful lot of CG in it, remakes have done. I hold that with all of them, I have yet to see a live action, in inverted commas, remake that can hold a candle to the, for the purposes of this sentence, cartoon originals. But it's fine. The performances are fun. It's the central casting caused a lot of controversy, but for only amongst stupid people and racists. So, it's fine. Hannah is going to go and see it you go and see it this evening, Hannah.
Who works on
You'll
the
be
show.
fine. You'll be fine. It's fine.
Number one in the States, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Patrick C. So here we go. So
Here we are. This is the hyphen. It's a hyphen.
It is a hyphen because it is a compound word,
Right.
not an end dash. Also, in the poster, it appears an interpunct was used.
What does that mean?
Well, exactly. There you go. It's an interpunct.
Is that like a steampunk?
It's a punctuation mark consisting of a vertically canted dot used for interword separation in ancient Latin script.
What?
So basically, it's not a hyphen because it's a box. It's basically a square. And that is an interpunct from the poster. So they don't even use an end dash. They use a block, like a single square. And that's an interpunct.
Wow. So it is not an N dash, it's not an M dash, it's not a hyphen, it's an interpunct.
Yes. Rod says, could be Rod Al or Rod AI, which is disturbing. I don't know. This movie,
Hello.
You can call me Rod. This movie really made me realize what it is about the animated features of Spider-Man that succeed the live action.
Where the live action films don't.
Yes, exactly. Is that they both get the dynamic and intense feeling of swinging and gliding around in a way that the live action films can't, because no matter how good they get, there is always going to be a disconnect between the CGI and the actual actor that the animated films never have to worry about. It's amazing how exciting it is to watch them all swing and glide.
Yes. I mean, I agree. Is that finished, or is there more of it?
Well, there's another email, but now you go.
I agree with it, and that was what I was saying, that in the early Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi's, the swing and glide thing was precisely that point that you just made. And when you see the animations, which are brilliant, so we've had Into, Across, I think next is Beyond, because they're essentially taking the comic strip format and giving you that. It's incredibly visceral and really fast and really kinetic, and there's no disconnect between the action and the quieter sequences.
We have more correspondence.
I love Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I think it's really good, and it's terrific that it's number one.
Excellent. And we have some more correspondence about Spider Interpunct Man.
Come on.
A bit later on. Okay, there just isn't time to fit them all in.
Can I just go back to, because he lost his dot and fell into a comma, is just...
Coming next, our special guests, who are Kelvin Harrison Jr. and Lucy Boynton. But first... Hey, Mark, did you know that the whole show is available on YouTube?
I did know that.
So you can
fabulous.
actually watch
the whole show.
People can see your glasses, see your T-shirt, and they're about to be able to see Kelvin Harrison Jr. and Lucy Boynton.
Oh, wow. I'd like to see that because I wasn't there.
So our guests, they were going to be joined by two stars of Chevalier, which is based on a true story, which you're about to hear explained. Anyway, it's all about Joseph Bologne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges. Kelvin Harrison Jr., who was B.B. King in Elvis and was rather fantastic.
Fabulous, yeah.
And also Lucy Boynton, who plays Marie Antoinette. You're going to hear all the details in just a moment. First of all, here is a clip from the film.
Perhaps we should settle this right now and get a couple of violins.
You're not seriously suggesting some sort of competition?
Yes, a contest. Who doesn't love a little contest, hmm?
Forgive me, Your Majesty. A contest?
Yes, for the head of the Paris Opera.
And how would that work exactly?
Simply, each of you will compose an opera for the music committee, and I shall have them select a victor based on the quality of the production. The winner shall be rewarded the role. And his opera shall premiere at the Palais Royal for all of Paris.
That is a clip from Chevalier, and I'm delighted to say that two of its stars are here. Kelvin Harrison Jr., who is the Chevalier. Hello, Kelvin.
Hello.
And Lucy Boynton, who plays Marie Antoinette. Your Majesty, welcome.
Thank you.
You're both looking spectacular. I feel very dowdy next to you. Although Kelvin was admiring my glasses, and now he's wearing my glasses. So
I think we look great.
They suit you, can I?
They suit you.
Well, if you're
as well.
trying to match the energy.
Anyway, you're both very welcome. What a fascinating topic for a movie. Introduce us to the character of Joseph Bologne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, Kelvin, because that's your character.
Yes. So I play Joseph Bologne, who was the son of a slave and a slave owner, and his dad noticed this incredible, well, the whole everyone noticed his incredible talent at the age of 4 and brought him to Labousier's Academy in Paris, where he became one of the best fencers, fought this guy named Picard, who was the reigning best fencer in Paris at the time, and garnered the attention of Marie Antoinette, the queen herself, and she named him the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and that's where our story begins.
Okay, so that's a brief synopsis. So Marie Antoinette, I want to talk more about what you've done with Marie Antoinette. So how does she engage historically with this character?
So Joseph kind of catches her attention with his excellence and his great talent. So she makes him Chevalier in order to kind of, I think, be associated with him. She brings him into her court. A Chevalier is a very prestigious title to award someone. And so although it's
like being a lord or a knight or something like that.
Yeah, like a knight. And so it's kind of shrouded in meritocracy, but actually she just wants to be seen around someone of such excellence and skill. And so it does, their relationship does have a combination of kind of chemistry, but also somewhat transactional. And so it can be,
So you're both
ruthless.
good. You're good for each other.
Pretty much. He does the same thing in his own version of it.
True.
What do we know? We know a lot about Marie Antoinette. Well, we think we know a lot about Marie Antoinette. In general, we don't know anything about Joseph Bologne. The film at the end, there's a little thing that comes up which says Napoleon Bonaparte kind of banned all his work, which is probably one of the reasons. But how much did you have to actually base your character on that was solid?
I wouldn't say there was much that was actually solid, but there were books that had been written, like Gabrielle Bonnat's book, A Virtuoso of Sword and Bow, was as you know, people have their debates on whether or not that's completely accurate or if Gabby was just making up certain things. But I do think that he does a good account of what actually happened on the plantation in Guadeloupe between the father and the mother. And what that dynamic, what the laws were like. He went to court and all these things and how he fought and how much money he gave Joseph and all those things you kind of use to create a backstory. But once you get to Paris and you actually deal with Marie Antoinette and Marie Josephine, you know there was a baby. You know that there was a Paris opera. We knew that there was maybe it wasn't necessarily a competition, but there was a debate of whether or not Gluck would come into it. But other than that, we don't really know if anyone actually came in to win the competition, who actually took the position. We knew there were divas. We knew all these things were happening. So you have to make up a bunch at the end of the day.
And of course, women, female musicians, black musicians, and their work is now being rediscovered because it was sort of forcibly repressed at the time.
Yes.
So we're catching up. Lucy, as far as Marie Antoinette is concerned, overwhelmingly, I would suggest, as soon as I say the words Marie Antoinette, they've got the phrase in their head, the let them eat cake thing. So it's not revisionist, but it's a different take on Marie Antoinette. Were you in any way hesitant about taking the role? What did you think when you read?
Not necessarily. I wondered why, before I'd read the script, I wondered why we needed to hear from a voice like hers again. And I feel, because I'm sheepish to admit that I had fallen into the trap of having a very strong preconceived idea of her, pretty much based around this reputation that's based on this misquote. And we do see her as this very frivolous, sheltered girl woman. And we don't realize that while we're referring to her as such, that we are literally talking about a child. She was 14 when she entered the French court. And I don't think that excuses behavior, but I think it gives great context to it. And I think, I keep saying it, but I think she's been so villainized throughout history in a way that I think is reserved for women. And had she been villainized for what she does in this film, it would have been legitimate and earned. But for the rest, it's less so. But so initially then when I started doing all of this research and understanding her more and kind of putting all my preconceived ideas away, I panicked about wanting to kind of reveal her as not this villain that we know her as, and then realize that it's more important to just kind of portray her in a way that was important to the tone of this film. And so, our iteration of her is kind of her in her later adulthood. And Stephanie Robinson, our writer, does such a beautiful job at giving context to all our characters' behavior and choices. And you do see her reach this choice, this fork in the road, of whether she's going to sit on the right or wrong side of history.
It's such a fantastic part of that the sense of history just before the revolution. There's a sense of the walls are closing in on this woman.
Absolutely. Yeah, and she becomes kind of like a cornered rat and starts acting and operating out of fear and self-preservation.
Can I ask you both about costumes and wigs? Because obviously, if you're actors, you wear costumes all the time. It's part of what you do. But there is something, Kelvin, about the way you dress and the significance of the wig, which later on you choose not to wear. But can you just explain a little bit about the importance of the dressing of the character here?
Yeah, I think the wigs, wigs signified a certain class level and a certain level of sophistication. And I have the one wig that they would make fun of me was blonde, but it had 2 curls, versus the gray wig has 3, which just means I'm really elevated in French society. And so it definitely changes how Joseph is perceived. It shows that, I'm not just a regular black man running through France. I'm someone that the Queen has deemed as special, as sophisticated, as smart, as someone you should respect. And that means a lot to someone of his color. But at a certain point, it becomes a mask. Stephen and I talked a lot about it being
the director.
Yes, our director. It being this cloak of invisibility in some ways, but it's twofold. Yes, maybe people won't necessarily acknowledge the fact that you won't get treated the same as another black person who may be working for whoever you protecting the palace, but at the same time, no one actually sees you. So no one actually cares about who you are as a person, Joseph. You're of service still in some form or fashion. So when he finally removes it, he's like, I'm embracing my culture. I'm embracing my roots. I'm kind of free. You can't own me anymore. I don't need your title. It's cute though. I like Chevalier.
But thanks, no thanks.
And is it true Marie Antoinette was like the first person to have a stylist? Is that true? So the way you look is amazing, obviously, but then you are the Queen.
Yeah, and I think she was very aware of how observed she was at all times. So she decided to become an author of that perception, or attempt to be. And so she was very involved in the way that she dressed and the way she was styled. And so, yeah, those costume fittings were great. She was a woman of more is more is more. And so, you can tell so much with the costumes, the intricacy in the way they're made, and then just the experience of sitting in them. So the contradiction of the great scale and spectacle of them and height and width versus the sheer restriction that is that corsetry that we didn't go as far with because of health and safety. But at the time it just... And still my experience was the kind of restriction of how you can move, how you can walk, how you can breathe and speak. You have to relearn to measure all of that so that you don't pass out while delivering a speech.
Kelvin, can I ask you about the opening scene, the violin-off, or whatever you want to call it, where you interrupt Mozart? Just introduce us to that, because as an opening 10 minutes, it's fantastic. So tell us what's going on there.
Yeah. Joseph hears that Mozart's doing a show, and he just wants to come in and spice things up. But it's originally based on, so Stephanie wrote in the script, she's like, imagine there's Jimi Hendrix and Clapton. And apparently this is a true account. And Clapton's playing the show, and then Jimi Hendrix shows up and kind of steals the show, but they didn't know who he was at the time. So then he completely just starts soloing and just shedding, and then Clapton goes, who the F is that? And it was Jimi Hendrix. And so that's where the conception of the whole Mozart.
That's exactly what Mozart says about you.
Yeah, exactly. So, Joseph does something similar. But it's so funny because Mozart has in the movie, Mozart has no idea that Joseph, he's a black man, knows or he calls him a dark stranger, knows my allegro. And next thing you know, Joseph starts doing it, but he does his own version of it. He plays a harmony to it, and then he starts improvising over it. And it's honestly better than the concerto.
So you're an accomplished musician. In fact, the last time I saw you, you were B.B. King in my favorite film of last year, which is Elvis. But here you are required to be a virtuoso, almost on the violin. Never mind the fencing, which we see you do as well. What level did you have to get to perform that opening scene?
I think that was the hardest one, the opener, because everything else is a little bit more manageable. But I think that was the first piece I got, so I had the most time to spend with it. It just, I did like a training, a boot camp before I got there. I did 5 months, 7 days a week, 6 hours a day. And in that, the first month was mostly just like trying to make sure you can get the bow hairs to the string connection and make sure that there was a through line and there was a solid sound coming through. Then after that, then you're trying to figure out getting the dexterity up. And then there's trying to get vibrato. And then by the last 2 months, it's like, okay, can I play all the notes? But most of them were scales. So we had to figure out a system to figure out which pieces of it would be the hardest and how can we do it as consistent as possible without completely blowing my spot. Yeah.
And when you say we, that's you and your dad.
My dad was my first teacher, and then I had another teacher named Wynton Grant when I got to Los Angeles. And then after I left LA, I went to Prague, and then I had Ronald Long, which was my final violin teacher.
So you've got to do all that and act.
Yeah, it was like I act, and then I go to fencing training, and then I go to violin. Well, my violin teacher would meet me in the living room of my apartment, and then I learn my lines. And
by comparison, Marie Antoinette has it easy in comparison with that.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, no.
I do not envy you.
Can I ask you about language and accents? It's all, obviously the decision was made to do it all in English.
Mm-hmm.
What are the accent? How were you told to speak? Or were you not told to speak? Were you just use your ordinary voice?
Yeah, it was kind of, not necessarily my own voice, but a kind of, regal, affected voice. And then we had a dialect coach to help with accurate pronunciation of names and, the specifics. But I think otherwise the focus was on trying to make this film really accessible to a modern audience and as broad an audience as possible. So it was just trying to keep a sense of modernity and I think, and youthfulness and accessibility. So again, we've talked a lot about those characters being really young and just kind of living with them and sitting with them so that it didn't feel, so disconnected from present day.
And there's a few snippets of French and the crowd chant in French, but what voice do you have as the Chevalier?
So Stephen was like, basically we found this in this book, was like, it says Joseph was like, he sounded like he was from the Americas. And we didn't know what that would look like. So we went through a lot of different voices. There was a point in this process where we actually took samples from Prince's voice and Jimi Hendrix's voice, and we mixed them together. And then we were going to do that voice.
Wow.
And then that sounded actually absolutely horrible. So then we changed that. And then we took Sidney Poitier's voice. That didn't work, obviously. And then Stephen was like, I want you to speak in your voice. And I was like, I'm from New Orleans, so that's not going to work. So then something happened at a certain point where all of them just started to settle into like this middle ground. He couldn't sound like he was complete. Like we would do certain vowels so it sound American, and then we would choose the rest to sound like the Queen. So he just sounds like whatever he wants to sound like. Because we didn't want to do a Caribbean thing because that didn't make any sense either. Anyway, we made a choice.
Love it. Works.
It seemed to be that there's a very significant point in Chevalier's life, which is marked here by the arrival of his mother.
Yes.
And he starts to see things slightly differently. Can you just explain how and why your mother arrives and the influence that has on Joseph Bologne?
Yeah, well, she represents a kind of a sore point in his life because he's been away from her for so long. But at the same time, she was the last memory of community. She was the last memory of love, of someone who truly wanted to protect and love him. But it's kind of been tainted because he feels like it might have been a betrayal to abandon him like that. So now he's trying to reconnect with her and rediscover who he is. And the last piece of his blackness is kind of being held with her, but he doesn't trust her. So we kind of, I don't know, she reintroduces him back to his roots and brings him back to a sense of a belonging that he didn't necessarily feel when he was trying to force his way into French society.
There's a scene where Chevalier, you're walking through past, I think it's your mother and some servants.
Yes.
And I would imagine they're all speaking a Guadeloupean French Creole.
Yes, Wolof.
Okay. And you say, what did you say? And I think they say, you look like a white boy.
Mm-hmm.
And that has quite a profound impact on him.
Mm-hmm.
So does he start to, because he's kind of like a reluctant radical. He's a reluctant politician. You know, he's part of society. Is that like a turning point for him? As again, we've talked about the walls closing in of the revolution. He has to kind of decide where he's going and what kind of man he is.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is, it's like, what his whole deal is, you don't necessarily understand what I've had to do to fit in here, what I've had to do to assimilate to get to this place, to this point in my life. Why can't you celebrate me, especially if you've been away for so long? And what's really tricky about Joseph is we're talking about a child who doesn't have the full, like, we have therapists now. You know what I mean? Like, we get to talk about it to a ridiculous, amount to figure out why we are the way we are. Joseph has none of that. He's literally just like, my dad pays for my apartment and the queen wants me to teach her harpsichord. And now suddenly I'm like going out for this position to be a director of the Paris Opera, and you're coming in and telling me I look like a white boy. I survived. So I don't know. He doesn't really know how to internalize that, but I think the thing is he wants to believe that the people that have been there to support him all this time actually are rooting for him. And the sad truth is everyone's rooting for themselves. But I think it just becomes a bigger life lesson. That's just how the world works, you know?
Yeah. Lucy, what do we see you in next? What are you up to next?
I've done another movie with Searchlight called The Greatest Hits, also attached to a strong music theme. And it, entertains or explores the idea of our relationship between music and memory and grief.
What do we see you in next, Kelvin?
The Lion King prequel. I just wanted to, lighten things up a bit.
Yeah. Okay. When do we see that?
Next summer.
Okay. Kelvin Harrison Jr., Lucy Boynton, appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I'll have my glasses back.
Thank you so much. They were amazing.
I love that you wore them for the majority.
I know. I was like, I could keep them on, but I felt
The thing is, they suit you.
They were chic.
More than they suit me.
No, I think they look great on you.
Look at those shades. Fantastic. The very
then he
talented,
puts his shades back on and they're just like, wow. Movie star shades.
Kelvin Harrison Jr., Lucy Boynton. But if you've never watched any of our interviews on the YouTube channel, that's a good place to start because they are dressed fantastically. They are both extravagantly dressed. They also both have the same color nail varnish. Everything about them says we're in a movie. And
we're fabulous.
Yes. And right at the end, there is a moment where I say to Lucy Boynton, what are you in next? She says, I'm in a film called Greatest Hits. There was a little moment in me when I thought,
radio.
I could almost get in there a little plug, but I decided not to. Anyway, the movie is Chevalier. It's a very interesting film. What did you make of Chevalier?
Well, it's an interesting story. I mean, there have been books written about this story before. There was a thing a couple of years ago, 2019, Bill Barkley did a play with orchestra called The Chevalier. And Stephanie Robinson's script does a very good job of basically introducing an audience to this, remarkable story. And what you have in it is, I was watching because it begins with the what you call the Violin-off. And I was reading stuff with Michael Abels and Chris Bowers, who are the composers and in charge of the different bits of the music. Michael Abels was saying that he actually wanted that first violin solo that Joseph plays to go into sounding like Jimi Hendrix, and then of course when he actually starts doing it becomes bluesy. There are those kind of two note bends in which it is completely anachronistic, but it's rather wonderful. And I knew when I was watching it, because you're such a big fan of Amadeus, that there is something weird about. Because the whole thing in Amadeus is that Salieri is furiously jealous of the fact that God has bestowed upon Mozart this great talent. And in this, Mozart is the preening nincompoop.
Yes.
who's
feeling upstaged by this guy.
Yeah, and I thought it was also lovely that analogy is then further included, that it's Eric Clapton, And so that's nice. And that kind of sums up, I think, the tone of the piece, which is that it's playful. It's got a kind of playful attitude to it. It's, all the anachronisms in it are to do with making the story modern. The modernity is kind of important. The key details of the story itself are really interesting. And of course, there's much more afterwards. We hear, at the end about him being the colonel in the 1st Black Regiment, and he was imprisoned later on. I mean, there are many ways you could tell this story. So what this is particularly doing is it's telling it in this way, which is very kind of frothy, very soap opera, very much to do with courtly intrigue, and he charms everyone, and those charms on the one hand help him to elevate his status, but they also cause people to become rivals with him because, you know, everyone is in love with him, and therefore you get the jealous husbands and the scheming, spurned divas. Minnie Driver, incidentally, has an amazing amount of fun with a fairly small role, but in which she says the word rehearsal in a way that will never sound innocent again. So all that stuff's really good fun, and I like the way it looks. It's got a very kind of, you know, people like going to the cinema to see. You know, it's very bewigged. It is also, as you were talking about in that interview, there are crucial times in which the wigs aren't used. If I have reservations, they are that the strokes are very broad. You yourself, I think you and I discussed this afterwards, that as dissent starts to reign outside, there is liberté, égalité, liberté.
That's all the crowd say.
That's literally, that's what it is.
I mean, crowd scenes and mob scenes are always very, very difficult to get right. I mean, the worst ever were in I, Claudius.
I, Claudius.
There you go. Which is like 6 people. Really, it was like a mob of 6 people, but they're very, very angry. This isn't like that, but it doesn't, you know, that bit didn't feel.
No, I mean, you know, it's, but so they are, the strokes are done broadly, and the jealous, scheming husband played by Martin Chokash, who is fantastic, and it looks like you really would not want to mess with him at all. He is very jealous and very scheming, and you get on the wrong side. All that stuff is done well. I think what it does do is it introduces you to the story in a way that immediately makes you want to go, I want to find out more about this, which is what I did because I didn't know much about it. I mean, I had heard bits of it because there have been productions around, and there was a review of the play in The Guardian because it was revived quite recently. But what it made you want to do is to go away. And then, of course, once you start reading, you discover, well, there's a lot that's known and a lot that is unknown. And as I said, there is scope to tell this story in many different ways. I think it's good fun. I think it's very, very, very easy on the eye. The performances are terrifically entertaining. Some of the strokes are broader than I would like them to have been, but that's the thing that will make it work in the multiplexes. Do you think it'll be a hit?
I think it'll be a moderate hit.
Okay,
I think we'll hear a lot of Kelvin Harrison Jr., I think, in future.
He's great, isn't he?
Because to be that talented and to be that musical.
And that charismatic.
It's extraordinary. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, so that's Chevalier. It's the ads in a minute, Mark. But first, it's time once again to step into our much-loved laughter lift.
Oh, dear.
Well, hey, Mark had a bit of a run-in with the old Bill yesterday. They knocked on the door and said that our dog had been chasing an old lady on a bike, which is absurd. He doesn't even own a bike. You need to kick him with an up slightly earlier than that.
Okay.
Went out for a succulent Chinese meal with a good lady ceramicist there indoors, even though she's got COVID. But there we go. Enough of that. She ordered
But you've tested negative, so that's fine.
That's fine. She ordered a number 48, which was called Big Duck. Tasted sensational, but the bill was enormous.
Hey!
Went to the dentist this week, Mark. I was in the waiting room, and the bloke in front of me went in. As he sat down, the dentist said, "What can I do for you, Mr. Smith?" The man said, Doctor, I feel like a moth." "That's all very well, but this is the dentist. What are you doing here?" he said. "I'm not really sure, but the light was on," said the man.
Very good.
And then he fell into a coma. Anyway.
I've got a joke. I made it up this morning.
Go on.
So,
is there time for this joke?
I'll be very quick. So our engineer was in here trying to connect my computer to the internet, and he said, "What's the name of that woman off the telly? You know, Miss Cotton?" And I said, "Fern Gully." I was really pleased with that.
A late addition to the laughter lift coming from an unexpected source, and then he had to try hard. Going to be back after this, unless you're a Vanguardista, in which case you sure look great, and your age and your service will not be interrupted. Well, here we are, and
I said it's Fern Gully.
Yeah. Every time you crack a joke, I need to do a poo. If there is anyone else that has so it's a puff on a cigarette, going to a record
shop.
What is going on here? What is happening in people's... Anyway, if you have a similar kind of... I I carry a piece of felt with me, and I need to go to the toilet.
The library. There we go. So the redactor in chief just said that it's the library that does it for him. But that's similar to Tim and the record store.
Maybe it's knowing that there isn't one.
It's the browsing.
Anyway, another Spider-Verse.
Okay. Yes.
Anonymous. I felt compelled to share my experience after viewing Spider-Verse this evening.
Okay.
And how a single line in the film held more significance to me than the filmmakers would ever know.
Okay.
Earlier this week, we were the victims of a burglary, which has left myself and my wife in a shaken state. Anxiety levels have been very high. We were concerned at the thought of leaving the house again following the event. As if that wasn't enough of an eventful week in itself, my wife and I have found out that we are expecting our first child. So it's been quite the roller coaster of conflicting emotions. Having been such a fan of the first Spider-Verse movie and loving cinema as much as we do, we decided that nobody was going to let our growing fear stop us from experiencing something that we enjoy so much. My anxiety was notable as the movie began, and I'm afraid to admit it included some brief non-code compliant checking of doorbell cameras every time that there was some movement outside my home.
I can understand.
But slowly I relaxed as the film distracted me from all my negative thoughts. It was as we arrived at one scene where a middle-aged Peter Parker tells Miles that, quote, bad things are going to happen. It makes us who we are, but good things are going to happen too. When something washed over me, allowing me to put the terrible events of the past week behind me and become reminded of the good news I had received and to be excited about thoughts of becoming a dad. Writers Phil Lord, Chris Miller, and Dave Callahan won't have known it at the time, obviously, but this line felt so deliberate and purposeful, as so many others did throughout the movie, that I can see why the film already means so much to so many people. The themes of parenthood and acceptance felt especially truthful, and I hope my experience is only one of many moments of empowerment by such a wonderful and creatively bold movie. Please don't read out anything that could identify me, as we haven't shared our pregnancy news with family and friends. If any listeners have any fun movie-themed suggestions on how we could reveal the news, we'll take those on board. That's from Roberto L. Callahan, 31 Arcacia Grove, Limassol. You can call him on 01333 664 553 at Google.
There's well, firstly,
congratulations and also commiserations.
Congratulations, commiserations. I'm very, very sorry because I know how that incredibly distressing that thing about invasion of privacy. I'll very quickly. I'll tell you my getting broken into story, which is years ago. I used to live in Hume in Manchester, and there was a lot of break-ins back then, and we were young. We didn't have a whole bunch of stuff, so it wasn't kind of life-changing. But the doors in Hume used to have these H-frame doors, which had glass, so two big panes of glass with wood. I mean, if you leant upon them, they would give in. But the thing was, I was living with Phil, and we went out, and we came. Phil, yeah. And we came back, and our flat had been broken into, and we'd lost, some guitars or, stuff like that. But in order to get in, they had broken the H-frame door. They literally just sort of smashed it and it had broken off. And the council said, well, the one good thing about it is that now that door is irreparable, we can give you a security door. I said, oh, what's that? They said a security door is a solid door, and it's it's like the name suggests, it's a security door. Now you're eligible for one. We said, that's great. They gave us a security door, and the next time we got burgled, and I'm not making this up, they stole the door.
But it's a gag now with the passing of time.
Exactly.
Here's an email from Nick and Babyetta. That's what it's signed. And we've had roller coaster emails before. This is a real roller coaster.
Okay.
Dear Benjamin Sniddlegrass and the Cauldron of Penguins, which establishes Nick as
long-time listener.
Not first-time emergency mailer, but hopefully you'll have time to read this out. I've listened to the show semi-regularly for too many years to count, but in the last 5 years, your witterings have become regular voices in my ears, bringing a weekly dose of solace, comfort, smiles, laughter, and tears. 5 years ago, my husband and I moved into a new home not long after we got married. We were pregnant and kept pinching ourselves at how lucky we were. Alas, this pregnancy, like the one before and the three that were to follow, was to come to an abrupt and painful end. The last 5 years, facing recurrent miscarriages, resulting in infertility, grueling fertility treatment, and several anxiety-ridden pregnancies have been devastating and isolating. As I retreated from the world, and then the world forced everyone else to go into isolation too, your voices have been a constant in my ears. Walking our dog for miles with only your witterings for company, I have cried, laughed, argued, idolised Tom Hanks, as we all have, discovered I have aphantasia, and most importantly of all, felt less hopeless and lonely. Seems so strange that you have been such a big part of my life and my healing, and yet you have no idea, so I wanted to let you know and thank you. The last 5 years have been the darkest and most painful time for me, in particular after our most recent loss. Our little boy Jack was born silently, and we had to say goodbye. Now, I am just starting to attempt to catch up with your most recent witterings after a 5-month hiatus. And when I explain why, I hope I'll be forgiven, to which the answer is yes. I've repeated the mantra, everything will be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end, continuously over the years. In December, we welcomed our precious baby girl, Etta, safely to the world. So the reason I said at the beginning it's from Nick and baby Etta is just the kind of hint that there was salvation. She is helping to heal all of our hearts, and of course I've been taking her to the other place that has brought me so much comfort over the years, the cinema. We have been enjoying baby screenings at our local cinema, and Etta seems to be quite the film snob. Here is what we have attempted so far. The Whitney Houston movie. Not even Stanley Tucci could save this film. For Etta, she screamed until I let her leave halfway through. Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. Etta adored this one. What's Love Got to Do with It? Etta found this predictable but enjoyable. She felt it would go down well on a Sunday afternoon with a cup of tea, Mrs. Creed 3. Etta was very pleasantly surprised by this. She was worried, having not seen any of the previous Creed films, or indeed any of the Rocky franchise, but enjoyed it very much. 65. Etta was extremely unimpressed and definitely doesn't agree with Mummy's view that there were dark-haired Adam What's-His-Name made it better. 80 for Brady, not enough laughs to justify staying for the whole film, unfortunately. Super Mario Brothers, Etta refused to even attend this one. So thank you again for helping me more than you'll ever know. Hello to Jason and Toby. Toby Jones, we haven't had Toby Jones on the show for a while.
It's been a Noby Jones season.
Tinkety Tonk, down with the Nazis and all hell the BHFs. From Nick and baby Etta. P.S. Thank you. I think of you whenever I spread my toast with butter. Lick the knife and then spread it with whatever I'm having with the same knife. This goes back to an old conversation about being a gentleman and being a lady. I said my dad's definition of a gentleman was someone who used the butter knife even when they were on their own.
That's right, yes.
Because we had a whole cutlery
because it was a matter of principle rather than you're not doing it in order to demonstrate to other people, but it's a matter of principle.
Yes, and I don't think people have butter knives or fish knives anymore, where they used to have.
More's the pity.
And we got sent cutlery and all kinds of things. Anyway, I said it was an emotional roller coaster, so.
No, well, thank you for that email. It's very moving, and wish you all the best going forward, and how brilliant to hear that cinema has played such a life-affirming role in all of this. Which, is the thing. Cinema does do that, sorry.
The parent and baby screenings are a fantastic idea.
Wonderful. And I mean, it's that, and then there's the screenings in which they lower the sound and keep the lights on half. The way in which cinema is adapting to the requirements of the audience is fabulous and right and brilliant, and
What is the right way to show a Transformers movie? With the lights on and the sound down?
Well, you've led me rather nicely to this. Well done. That's very good. That's why you're the top paid host on Greatest Hits Radio.
I'm not, by the way. Not anymore.
No, I know. I was halfway through that sentence. I suddenly realised that probably wasn't factually true anymore. Anyway, okay. Transformers Rise of the Beasts,
all right,
which is, I believe, the 7th installment in the live-action Transformers series. Obviously, there was Transformers movies before the live-action. So, set in mid-90s, a sequel to Bumblebee and a prequel to Transformers, the first one, inspired apparently by Hasbro's Transformers Beast Wars series. Really? No, me neither. The plot involves the dark god Unicron, and if I get any of this wrong, forgive me, I was trying to keep up.
I don't think it'll matter.
Who destroys planets, and he destroys a planet that is peopled by Maximals, who are like Transformer animals, who escape to prehistoric Earth, Fast forward to the mid-90s. Anthony Ramsey's Noah is trying to get a job to help to pay for his younger brother's medical care. Meanwhile, Dominic Fishback's Elena is an artifact researcher looking to make a name for herself because her colleague keeps taking all the credit. Their paths cross when an artifact that she has breaks. It breaks open to reveal a transwarp key, which is a key that can help the Transformers on Earth get home, but also calls to Earth the Terracons. So everyone has to team up to face the darkness. Here's a clip.
For centuries, our kind has stayed hidden on Earth. But darkness has found us again. Prime. This is about the fate of all living things. Unicron is coming.
It won't stop!
Back up! Oh, I thought we were boys.
You want it? Come and get it.
You brought a human here?
I'm nobody. I ain't even seen nothing. I'm not even seeing anything right now.
Is a transwarp the same as a time warp?
Let's do the transwarp again.
Yes.
I'm sure they're all connected in some weird way. 50th anniversary, isn't it, of Rocky or something. So, the first live-action Transformers movies were directed by Michael Bay, and they were horrible. And they were notable mainly for their leering sort of sub-porno aesthetic. You know, Megan Fox bending over a car was the key image in those movies. And there was something really twisted about the fact that Michael Bay thought that that's what you should do with a kid's toy. And I hated those films. You may remember.
I do remember
how much I didn't like them. Then we had the 6th installment, which was Bumblebee, at which point Michael Bay had stopped directing and the directing duties were handed over to somebody else. And so for the first time, you had a movie which didn't have that attitude, and its human leads weren't Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox. And they go, you know, and therefore, in my head, was infinitely preferable to any of the Michael Bay movies. And I quite liked Bumblebee. Bumblebee, I still think, is the best of the series. This isn't quite as good as Bumblebee. 2 hours long, it's quite exhausting. The smashy, crashy crescendos follow that Michael Bolton thing, you know, Doctor Who rule of this is the biggest, most big thing of all the big things of ever in the bigly, and you're 5 minutes in, you go, okay, well, I don't know where you're going to go. Oh, and I saw it on the IMAX screen, and it was like very, very, very loud, very, very, very loud, very, very, very loud, smashy. But it's to the point that it gets so loud it almost goes silent. But at least it is an unashamed robots hitting each other film, not robots hitting each other with that absolutely leery aesthetic that Michael Bay had. Got likable leads, which you didn't have in the Michael Bay Transformer movies. You've got a plot that basically says, you know, we need to all work together because that's the way we're going to overcome the darkness. It's teamwork. Teamwork is the key. It's not being, you know, an individualist. It's teamwork. So the messages are all on message. The human cast are kind of likable. The action is lots of robots, lots of Transformers, lots of different mechanoidal things, smashy-bashy crashing each other. There's a brilliant moment in it when it's too late. Something has happened. The portal to everything has thinged the thing that will thing the thing forever. Oh, but it turns out, I think they put a turn-off key somewhere. If only we could find that. No, they didn't. No, but it's just because you've got to the point in the plot when you go, oh, there's a turn-off key. But now, in order to get the turn-off key, you must go off and find that's a kind of video game thing. But it's all right. I mean, it's rubbish, but it's perfectly innocuous rubbish. It's not as good as Bumblebee. It's better than any of the Michael Bays, and it doesn't have that whoa thing that Michael Bay had.
You look like Benny Hill when you did that.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I imagine Michael Bay directing. Like Benny Hill with his trousers rolled up going, whoa!
That's enough of that. Correspondence at KelvinHarrison.com. If you've seen it or if you've seen anything and you wish to take part. No further news this week, but if you have a 20-second audio trailer that you'd like to send, part of a voice note, letting us know about a particular film, production, or something that you need to tell us about the world of movies, send it to correspondence at KelvinHarrison.com and we'll add it to our What's On list. That is the end of Take One. It's been a Sony Music Entertainment production. The team was Lily Hambley, Ryan O'Meara, Sancho Panza, Gully Tikel, Beth Perkin is the guest booker and assistant producer. Hannah Talbot was the producer. Simon Paul is the redactor. Mark, what is your film of the week?
I think I'm going to go for Chevalier because I think, it's a good conversation starter.
It is. Thank you for listening. Our extra takes with a bonus review, a bunch of recommendations, even more stuff about the movies and cinema-adjacent television is available right now. Don't forget, you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. Take 3 will arrive in your device's inbox next Wednesday. Thank you for listening. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.